we confirm if Malam Nasir El-Rufai is live for us on Zoom? Okay, good to know. Right, so let's start this way with Honorable Nena. I mean, you've talked a lot about the National Assembly itself as an institution, the role it's supposed to play, the gaps that currently exist. Since 1999, we've seen the National Assembly become much more powerful. Has it used that power well, if you have to consider everything that happened between 1999 to date?
Well, the National Assembly is supposed to be powerful. It's supposed to be powerful to the extent that it collates the aggregate opinion of a critical mass of the Nigerian people, and it's the only bastion of our democracy that stands in the gap, literally, between the executive and the people. Now, over the years, like I said, there's been ebbs and there's been flows. There was a period from 1999 where the twin legacies of militarism and suppression ensured that the National Assembly was still finding its feet. Fast forward to a couple of years, like I pointed out in my address, there was the struggle of finding its feet in that tri-party, because every time there's a coup d'etat, the executive remains, the judiciary remains, the first person that goes is the National Assembly, they suspend the constitution, and so it's no longer constitutional democracy. And so even the transition from militarism to civilian rule the National Assembly struggled a bit, okay? And that struggle was by determined men and women to ensure that they stamped their place in the tri-party. Now, over the years, what happened, like I posited in my paper, that the National Assembly in 1990, 2005, was so independent, and I don't think powerful is the word. I think independent is the word we're looking for here. It was so independent, and it had its hands literally on the pulse of the Nigerian people. The Nigerian people did not want a third term. The National Assembly went out there, collected the voices of the Nigerian people, and ensured that that was stopped dead in its tracks. When Nigeria was I was in the National Assembly at the time when there was the doctrine of necessity. I mean, our hands were up in the air as to what to do, and again, an independent National Assembly. But there has always been the attempt of executive overreach, and I remember the picture of the headlines. I think it was Daily Trust. It said, "Reps defied zoning, elect Tambuwal as speaker." And the same thing happened in the Senate. And so it took resilience to say that it is primus inter pares, it is our institution governed by us, three equal arms of government that must regulate each other. And so the National Assembly at a point was very powerful, yes. But then over the years, we have seen that the National Assembly, I mean, all the borrowing plans, I remember in the House of Representatives as well as in the Senate, there was a committee on loans and aids. So every time that the president brought a loan request, when it was read on the floor, it went to the Committee on Loans and Aids. We looked at it, we looked at the conditions behind that loan, we brought it back to plenary, discussed it, debated it, and most times we refused, because sometimes it wasn't project specific, sometimes it was clarity, it was shrouded in opacity. We just refused because it was not in the interest of the Nigerian people. Now we've seen loan requests back to back, and when you ask individual members of the National Assembly what are the reasons behind these loans, what are the conditions behind these loans, what is, everybody just seems like they were not in the room. So for me, I think that the National Assembly has seen a period of struggle. It has peaked. Unfortunately, today, the National Assembly is struggling and it has tanked.
And Mr. Dare, bringing you into the conversation, if you have to put today's theme on a scale, what is working and what is not, which one do you think will outweigh the other?
Today's what?
Yeah, what is working and what is not working, which one would outweigh the other?
Sounds like a trick question, isn't it? And I think that if we get ourselves bogged down on metrics, we might shield ourselves from reality. Oftentimes, it's not a black and white thing. And when it comes to what is working, when it comes to democratic journey, when it comes to structures, when it comes to the economy, is a process that is a continuum. When we looked at the first, second, third, and fourth republic, we found that we've had several presidents who had come, who had tried to address different issues and challenges of our country, who had done their bits and moved on. We have a nation that is 60 plus years right now. We look at America, we see what is happening in America. It's still not a perfect union. 200 years plus in governance. And I think our interest today should be to fast forward to look at what is work and at whose watch. The current leadership, clearly, we see clear markers about efforts to reverse the bleedings of the past. You know, we see a lot of data, and I say for every data we see, there's a data, there's another data, and there's a counter data. So what's working? What's working is the fact that we have had the Nigerian economy recalibrated. The figures we want to quarrel with were all in the red, in the negative, prior to when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came. Who can quarrel with the current GDP? The World Bank is where we run to. When people quote 140 million Nigerians under poverty, it is the World Bank that gives that data. When the same World Bank says this economy, the growth outlook and prospects for the Nigerian economy is now 4.4, people have a quarrel with that. The same institution. So I will stay with what's working, because the fact that it's working means that you've taken care of what is not working. And you have a government that has gone on the path of reforms. Malam El-Rufai talked about reform. And I did in my paper, I said reform is the insurance for democracy. Because no society progresses without reforms. India had to embark on reforms before it got to the level where it is, with its massive population. The same thing in Egypt, when they had the meltdown. Forex, electricity was down completely. They went on the path of reforms. And now we can point to Egypt as one of the successful countries, economies in Africa. Ghana, we all remember when Ghana started its problems. Ghana went on the path of reforms. Now you see even Nigerians preferring to go to Ghana to attend school. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has placed this country on the path of reforms. Reforms are painful. Reforms cannot start from 0 to 100. It's a process. Are we seeing the results of these reforms? Microeconomic reforms? Absolutely. Are we seeing the impact on our society? Yes. But it's progressive, it's going to take time, and we must tarry as a country.
All right. Okay, let's bring in Malam Nasir Rufai to the conversation. If you can hear us, Malam, can you just confirm if the audio is clear enough?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Hello.
I hope you can hear me and see me. Hello, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me and see me. Hello? Hello? Hello?
when we speak about the rise in the GDP figures and so on and so forth, and like my brother here said, he said that the same World Bank says to us that they peg the GDP numbers, they say to us that there is growth, yet in the same breath they say to us that by the end of 2026, 141 million Nigerians are going to have translated to multidimensional poverty. So I don't understand it. I think he's in the best position to understand it, considering that they're the ones who are driving the reforms and giving us those figures.
Right. So yes, when I said GDP, I meant GDP per capita, which I think is
let me just respond. And I think the point I made bears repeating. I said the same opposition that runs to town with the 140 million data from the World Bank shies away from celebrating the GDP growth that we witness in this country. That's the point I made. And of course, I did query the World Bank poverty statistics last year. And even when Pricewaterhouse brought out its statistics 2 weeks ago, I had the same query. And it's simple. You need to go to the P2P, purchasing power parity. What will $2 buy you in America? When you change that to Naira, that's about 300. What will it buy you here? And I say when they benchmark and they measure poverty, it must not isolate the reality of that country.
15 minutes in Q&A. Sure, I can hear them now. I can't.
Can I?
I can see them. I can't hear a word.
We are outside.
Yes, I think I can hear you now.
Conversation is about reforms. You know a lot about it. You've been a part of it. The past 5 administrations that we've seen in the Fourth Republic, what has worked in all the reforms that they have tried to implement? And what do you think are some of the reasons why most of these reforms have failed to hit home? IT, could we try using just audio if that's going to work? Okay, let's make progress because we don't have audio. If at all the connection is stable enough, we would circle back to him. But if you can attempt to answer the question from your own understanding, every administration promised reform. At one point or the other, it was supposed to be the solution. Some would say we've missed Vision 2020, even before 2015, we've missed Vision 2030, which is still yet to come.
Again, it's the leadership selection process, because it's one thing to have the policies, it's yet another thing to have the drivers of the policy. It's one thing to have a vision, it's another thing to have the political will to drive these policies. And so when we come up with this highfalutin Vision 2020, this by the year, those 35% affirmative action and all those kind of highfalutin things, the question is, what is the expertise behind it to drive it? What is the will to drive it? What is the continuity that is required to drive it? And what is the feedback mechanism in trying to drive it? Now, I find that most of the time we go to all these summits abroad, and we import a lot of things from these summits. For instance, the climate justice conversations and all those kind of things. And I am an advocate for climate change, but I also believe that, for instance, when Nigeria comes up with its climate change policy, you see us importing the climate change policy of countries that, one, are not petro states, two, that are the top emitters, and three, do not have greater capacity to deal with climate change. So when Nigeria, for instance, is talking about the fact that we want to turn to renewable energy by 2020, our mainstay is petroleum. We have no business having that conversation. We should have the conversation of people who are saying, drill, drill, drill. Again, when they say that we want to contribute X amount of money to climate change, my question is that the whole of Africa, 54 countries in Africa, contribute 3% to carbon emissions. United States does 24%, China does 29%. So the only conversation that African countries should be having is climate justice, where we hold the top emitters to account. But what happens is that we come up with policies that are importations from the countries that do not share our same complexities, and we expect them to work. And I think that was just an example.
All right. Mr. Dare, if we could just switch to politics a little bit. During Malam Nasir Rufai's presentation, he did talk about coercion, he did talk about a variety of things, which I think directly is targeted at the government that you are a part of. From 99 to date, we've seen the emergence of strong political parties. We've seen some of them die out. We've seen some of them relatively stay alive as we speak, as we prepare for 2027. Do you believe people who say that the APC has become an existential threat to political parties in Nigeria because of this incursion into opposition parties in the country? Do you believe that there is some sort of legitimacy in the argument there, and why they express those worries as we prepare for 2027?
No, I don't think there's any credibility to that. And if you back up a bit, history will teach us. We are witnesses, most of us are witnesses, to 16 years of PDP rule. And the same could be said at that time. PDP was the dominant party. We are within a multi-party system, let me say. And what you get really is what we got that time, a dominant party, the PDP. What you have now is the dominant party, the APC. And what are the characters of this dominance? PDP had 21, moved to about 28 states. We knew what happened those 16 years when they had the presidency. The multi-party system that we have in this country is almost sacrosanct. Now, what we get now is, and I'm careful about the language because I remember what the chairman said, but it's very important to say that the cry of the opposition about incursions into their parties, where do you want to place that? Because we just said one of the things working in the Fourth Republic is that people are able to move from one party to another, that democratic choice. So when a governor moves from a party to another, how do you blame the APC for that incursion? That's on the one part. But also, I think the fear, you didn't say it, but the fear is that, APC, is pushing for a one-party state. And I say, look, Nigeria is a multi-party system. APC is a dominant party, absolutely. Those that want to cross over can cross over. And let me conclude this response by saying we have a lot of ventriloquists around who claim to be visionaries, and there's a difference. I have been in the opposition before, and I know the swan song of the opposition. We're seeing that play out. But I think the opposition must bring a different play, bring better ideas, and push those ideas in very superior conversations.
Okay. To summarize, the APC is not bullying any opposition party. The opposition parties are simply just weak. I mean, how do you react to that?
I think it's very interesting that for somebody who says, and Mr. Sunday Dare says he's a Democrat and a politician, and all those charming, well, you're not a politician, but you're strictly involved in politics. I think that 26 years later, I think what should be paramount is deepening and strengthening our politics, is strengthening our institutions, is ensuring that from loose arrangements, we start to forge ideological political parties that speak to the needs of the Nigerian people. And so when a person says to me that a governor who was elected on a particular platform can just move against the Electoral Act, against a pronouncement of the Supreme Court, which of course we're still dilly-dallying and shilly-shallying over, it really shocks me. Because I think it's not the fault of the APC, but it is actively supported by APC and just said by you as well. So what I'm saying in essence is that, I think that we all the actors in the political space have a responsibility to Nigerians to entrench true democratic ideals in a way that makes sure that the political parties act as filters as we start to look at the gatekeepers of our democratic experiment. I think that whether you're APC or PDP or whatever, when the Nigerians speak about us, they speak about us with one tar brush. And I think that we need to go back and do a lot of housekeeping about what kind of politics are we offering the Nigerian people in the hope that we can give them the governance that they deserve. And, I would rest my case on that. But I think that there's an active weaponization of state institutions against the opposition. I do.
All right. We're going to pause here for a moment and open the conversation up. The rules are quite simple. You must stay on the topic, and you have to keep it light. 2 minutes maximum. State your name and go directly to the point. We'll try as much as we can in the next 10-15 minutes to get as many respondents as we can. And if you have any question directed at the panel, because we understand Mr. Dare has to be somewhere. So I'm going to start with people who have any question that they would like him to respond to. Is there anyone? Anyone has a question for the Special Advisor on Policy Communication? Okay. Can we pass the microphone to the gentleman in the yellow vest?
Is the man in the yellow vest?
Yes.
Don't call Buba. Buba will speak for 10 minutes. The man in the yellow vest. Gentleman in the yellow vest. No mic.
Okay. Just before we get to him, one person, I believe Malam Umar Farouk, said that, Mr. Dare, you said, quote, democracy thrives in the atmosphere of economic fairness. Can you elaborate on the establishment of, gold refinery, the private gold refinery in Lagos, and why that is? Refineries, where are the refineries within the northern region, he says, I believe. I hope I captured the question.
Gold refinery.
Yes.
Well, I'm not the Minister of Solid Minerals, but I did read a very strong rebuttal from the Ministry of Solid Minerals, explaining very clearly that it's a private refinery, bringing out the profile of the woman who owns the refinery and how she grew that refinery in the past 10 years. And there are pictures of the woman, of the refinery itself. It's private, strictly private, and government has no hand in it. And I know that, licenses have been issued, some have been cancelled, they're being reissued. So the question of the federal government setting up that refinery in Lagos, perhaps in the southwest, doesn't arise. That rebuttal is straight to the point, it's factual, and I think that would be my response to that.
Okay, any more contributions? Okay, please go ahead, the Publicity Secretary of the PDP.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ini, a member of National Public Secretary, PDP. First is to my big brother, Dare, who said that the political space has not been constricted. I'd like to ask that considering the fact that you agree that democracy is a destination and democratization is the journey. And when you speak about the journey of the APC, you seem to speak about it from just 2023, and you admit that you took a fractured economy. Remember that APC was there 8 years before 2023. So tie that to consolidation of democracy. Tie that to the fact that people no longer trust the judiciary. Tie it to the politicization of the judiciary and the judicialization of politics. Tie that to the fact that clearly you have a minister in your administration who openly sits on television and says a president saved a governor in this administration. Tie that to the fact that there is absence of consequences. When you speak about GDP, please tie it to the fact that you meet everyday Nigerians, and when you interact with them, do they reflect the economy that you speak about, the GDP? Those are the things I want you to speak to.
All right.
Thank you so much. The identifier is very important. The publicity secretary of the PDP. And I wouldn't expect anything lesser than that. And you straddle between a question and, of course, a submission. You piled in so many things. Yes, there's no denial about it. The APC has been in government for close to 11 years. And we're unafraid to do an audit of the APC government in 11 years. But also, we're also bold to look at, because Nigeria is a work in progress, we're also able to look back to say the APC took over from the PDP. Somebody was in charge of the shop for 16 years. Somebody was supposed to have provided the rail transportation. Somebody was supposed to have improved our electricity with $16 billion. Somebody was supposed to have improved our airports, improved our schools for 16 years. And that somebody failed. And that's the PDP. But we have moved beyond that. It takes time to recover. It takes time for reforms to grow. So, in 11 years, have we seen this country improve? On the democratic level, yes. But we talk about the judiciary. And what we're seeing in the judiciary today is not particular to the APC in government. Reforms of the judiciary, the calls for that reform have been on for a long time. My sister has talked very eloquently about the legislature. We have the former Senate president here. I've never been a lawmaker. But you also know very clearly that every government we have, every set of lawmakers that come in, it is absolutely incorrect to want to simply label them as rubber stamp. Just imagine the Constitution, 109 senators, 362 House of Rep members, 360, and you say they're entirely rubber stamp. These are representatives of the people. And we have seen them in the last 2.5, 3 years pass laws that have benefited Nigerians, no doubt. Nations take loans. Nations do take loans. America is heavily in debt. This administration is taking loans it can justify. It can point to projects for which there's loans. So I think it's important. There are a few things you raised here that are personal. I want to stay on substance. But I know that the work of building this nation is a continuous one. Every administration inherits liabilities and assets. And I dare say that every government that comes in place tries its best to make sure it meets the challenges head on. Is the APC doing that? Absolutely. Okay. Are problems over? No. But I challenge everyone here to say, look at where we were 2023, 2022. and look at where we were now. Just take simply the unification of Forex, the arbitrage, 70%. The stability that has been brought into that entire Forex market. Take 20 years of fuel subsidy, the bleeding that took place, and where we are now, freeing up the resources for the subnationals.
Okay.
60% increase, etc.
Right.
Let's stay with the facts and leave the noise aside.
Okay. I suppose inadvertently, the Tinubu administration has become the backdrop to our conversation this afternoon. But let's proceed. Your contribution, sir.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Comrade Issa Aremu. I'm the Director General of the Premier Labour Institute in Ilorin. I have a short comment for Mr. Sunday Dare. But before then, let me say there's something that has been working, which I thought all the panelists will have recognized since we started this republic. I think it's daily trust. You know, and I think for daily trust to keep faith with 23 editions of National Dialogue is highly commendable. We shouldn't take this for granted. And we can expand it to also the media generally has kept this republic alive. But my suggestion to Daily Trust, before I come to Dari, is that we need to make your panel far more inclusive so that we can have holistic views about what is working and what is not working. Looking at all the panelists, you know, they don't live on minimum wage. My dear friend, I wish him quick recovery. Minimum wage earners cannot go abroad for medical treatment, you know. That's Malam Merufai. But what I mean about that is that labor can also say about and I'm saying this with your background as a media man. Of late, the media has become very excited whenever there are frustration. They'll be reporting about coup attempt, you know, all sorts of things that we don't need to, you know, promote. Nigeria has gotten 8 presidential cycles of elections, highly commendable. We have 95 million register voters, even though Nena pointed out that that doesn't translate to voting. Voting our party is coming up. All we need to do is to further deepen the democratic process, not less. How do we strengthen civilian supremacy of this process?
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Comrade Aremu. And just another reminder that we have to stick to the rules of engagement. 2 minutes is maximum. We do not want to have to cut anybody off. But Mr. Sundadare, your quick response, and I also understand that you need to be somewhere else, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, Comrade Issa Aremu. I'm not sure you gave a full declaration of who you are, Labour person, head of Modu Institute. I think the media is playing its role. The media is a watchdog. The media cannot shy away. I think the issue of excitement, the excitement that comes to the media is that they are reporting news and events as they break. But that excitement does not mean that they support military coup or are subverting the democratic process. Far from it. How do we deepen democracy? I think it behoves on everybody. The fact that first we must see that the judiciary is independent, fiercely. We must see that executive plays its role. And also, of course, the legislature. Critical, very critical. That indeed is a lifeway of every democracy. How do we deepen democracy? As citizens, we get the opportunity to go back to the poll every 4 years to either reward or punish our representatives. How seriously do we take this? Do we just pander? Do we sell our votes? Do we defend our votes? Do we play the roles we need to play? So when we talk about democracy, deepening democracy, it's not just about the leadership alone. When you look at the population of those who go to elective offices, and then you look at the number of voters who go to the polls to vote, is huge. We need vigilance. Vigilance is the price of eternal freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And please, can we get a round of applause for our panelists and keynote speaker, Mr. Sundadare, as he takes his leave. Thank you so much. No, not really. I think we still have you on the panel for the time being. This is specifically addressed to you from Abubakar Kawu Baraje, CON. He says, you made mention of judiciary and INEC being critical stakeholders of democracy. The appointment of judicial officers and INEC officials should rest solely on the executive, or what do you think needs to be done?
I think that with the judicial processes, I mean, when we look at the democracies that Nigeria has emulated, like the United States, it's still, they're still battling with appointments to the Supreme Court, for instance. And I think that over the years, as we deepen and strengthen our democracy, I don't think the greatest problem, it should still rest, because there's the National Judicial Institute and so on and so forth, and they're all involved in the appointment of judicial officers. But I think what is the most important thing is the National Judicial Commission, the NJC, and the ombudsmen within, for instance, the judicial processes that holds erring judges to account, the name and shame, and more importantly, and I always point out, the most important office in any democracy is the office of the citizen. And I think that when there are judicial infractions and so on and so forth, we must always be reminded that it's not only permissible, like I said in my paper, but it is our duty to hold them to account. Because, as they say, and I hate to be cliche, that, you know, the sheer independence of the democracy is dependent on the institutes or in the institutions that hold them to account. So I think the appointment is one thing, but I think holding them to account in the process of administering justice is more important, and I think that's what keeps them on the straight and narrow.
Okay. Before we wrap things up, some comments here, and I'd just like to read them out. Joy in Kuruka says, the question is this: while a lot has been said here about democracy, governance, accountability, and economic recovery, there seems to be a major silence around healthcare. One of the speakers mentioned seeking medical treatment abroad for bacterial infection, yet millions of Nigerians cannot even afford basic healthcare at home due to fake drugs. poor medical facilities and lack of regulation. How can democracy truly work, and how can citizens truly trust leadership when those in power depend on foreign healthcare, while the system meant to serve the people continues to fail? Should healthcare not be treated as a core indicator of whether governance is truly working or not? She also doubled down to say that a lot was said about insecurity, yet little or nothing was said about the welfare of security operatives who confront these challenges daily. Many of them work under harsh conditions with inadequate support and welfare. How can the government expect professionalism and effectiveness from security operatives when their welfare is not prioritized? Should welfare not be central to any serious conversation about security and governance? Moving to the next one, Sabiu Zarenda says, before our eyes, nomadic education was launched, and look at how the agency has been abused, with consequences we are paying dearly for. He says, now the same mismanagement that plagued nomadic education is unfolding at UBEC and SUBEB. If we couldn't contain that rot in a micro-society like nomads, what hope do we have when UBEC and SUBEB undermine? It says undermining comes to the fore. Knowing how to tackle this menace is crucial for many. I suppose that's what he's trying to say. He said a strong reason for us to boost our security, especially regarding what's happening in our neighboring countries. Okay, the last one. This is from Quinette Anthony. She says, my question is directed to Honorable Nena Okeje. She's the only one left on the panel, so that's the only option. And it is about the Special Seats Bill, which aims to improve women's representation in our political institutions. My question is on the implementation challenges. What do you see as the biggest obstacle to the passing of the bill? Is it political, cultural, or legal? And how can we overcome this? If you can just make an attempt to answer that and the one that came before it.
Okay. Well, with regards to the Special Seats Bill, I shall answer you by telling you a story. I have a son. My father had 2 granddaughters who were 5 years older than my son, and they were showing signs of, growth, and they were charming and witty and chatty and beautiful. And my son comes 5 years later, and my father walks into the hospital, takes one look at my son and calls him leader of the pack. Now, if that's not affirmative action, I don't know what is. Because there he was, a day-old boy who had done absolutely nothing, and he was already the leader of the pack. And I think that is one of the greatest cultural problems that we have. That leadership is conferred upon men, whether or not they deserve leadership, and so that answers the cultural answer. With regards to political, it's deeply entrenched. With 4 women, and people react to what they see. So with only 11 women in the National Assembly and some states having 0 women, the picture of leadership wears a pair of trousers. And so Nigerians are socialized to believe that leadership is male, forgetting that back in the day we had the Queen Aminas of Zazzau and so on and so forth, who were very strong women and female leaders, and we had the Aba women riots led by strong women. And so when we try to suffer from the tragedy of the incomplete narrative and say historically women have always been in the backdrop, that's not true. Nigerian women have been very strong and they've led from the front. So I always challenge that cultural question. Now, with regards to politics, they would say that, and I'm always pat the example, if Nena could do it, so can you. But, I don't even want to tell you the backstory of how Nena gets to do it, because it's too much hard work. It's like all of us at the start line with both our hands tied behind the back and you asking us to run. 1, there's disempowerment of women. Elections in Nigeria are ridiculously expensive. How many women are empowered to afford it? The leaky pipeline between the number of women who want to run and the women who eventually become the things that they want to become is so dramatic. And so, it's a myriad of reasons. So that in itself is a whole conversation on its own. With regards to the soldiers and the people who stand on the wall and ensure that our democracy runs. Let me give full disclosure. I'm a barrack child. My father was the first set of the Nigerian Air Force, so I'm a little partial to soldiers, and I understand what it is that they've done. And yes, especially at times like this, when they battle the kind of warfare, asymmetric warfare that they face, they must be given every encouragement that is required. I know that also in dealing with what the response, and I believe also it's policy, what do we want to do? Do we want to assimilate insurgents? Do we want to decimate them? Do we want to relocate them? And again, that is an entirely different conversation as to the welfare. It also speaks to policy, it speaks to strategy, it speaks to engagement, and so on and so forth. So in that as well, it's a bit of a convoluted answer. With regards to healthcare, well, the truth of the matter is that with brain drain, most of the doctors in Nigeria and the working conditions of doctors in Nigeria is pathetic. And so, yes, in the National Assembly, there's been conversations that people in public office must not be allowed to go abroad for medical treatment, that hopefully that would ensure that we deepen and strengthen our health institutions. I believe that it's work in progress. Again, it goes back to the people. How much citizen engagement is there? How much do the citizens demand what they want? And how much do we, the people in voting, help the leadership selection process to actually elect people who are going to answer to the questions that we raise?
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the last woman standing on the panel, Honorable Nnenna Okeji. Thank you so much for your wonderful contribution. And yes, please can we get a round of applause for the members of the audience for being fantastic, for being patient, and for being attentive.